think one of my biggest things is like I like to break the race course into blocks. Some coach told me one time that there'll never be a climb more than 4 minutes, which is totally wrong because there's climbs longer than 4 minutes.
Was that Preston lying?
I don't think that was my
Was that a
line.
head fake?
I don't remember who told me.
I love it.
But
I know what coach it was. It wasn't us.
Welcome to Brain Stoke. We are so excited today to have Ashlee Hogge in studio with us. As always, thank you, Aspire, a network of mental health companies who allow us to use their offices, and so gracious of Liza, actually my wife, who turns her office over to us on a regular basis, and we appreciate her. This is going to be awesome because this is our first student athlete interview within the actual Utah High School Cycling League season. The season has begun. So where do we go from here?
Yeah. So Ashlee Hogge, you're a senior with Morgan High. So you race Region 2 currently, right? You've had 2 races. I think you won both of those varsity girl races so far in Region 2, right?
yeah.
Tom and I have had a front row seat to Ashlee over the last 6 years riding a bike. And we've seen it all. We've seen some serious grit, some serious determination from you. So we're excited to learn a little bit about what makes you tick. You know, you're also on a development team, the We development team out of Colorado. I think there's roughly like 30 racers throughout the country that are on that team. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that too. But maybe because we're just coming off the back end of the Mantua race, the second race of the season, let's start there. Maybe tell us, how did that race go? How did you prepare for that? Where was your mindset? And then we'll jump around.
I think like I had the confidence of the first race to go into that one being like, okay, like I know where I stand with these girls and of course it's a race, so like anything can happen, and you know, nothing's official until the race is done, as my dad always says, right? But I went in with that confidence of the first race, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get this done. And I'm like, well, let's go catch some varsity boys, right? Every varsity girl dream.
I love it.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, secretly, those girls in front, we want to get in those varsity boys. Like, we got to calm them down, you know? Rumble them a little bit.
That is brilliant. And did it happen?
No. It was pretty sad at the end of the race. I was like 10 seconds away from one. I'm like, man, I was so close. But
Actually, are you competitive?
I'm really competitive.
I know you are. It's awesome.
I want to dive further into the actual Mantua race, because it was, if you weren't on the front, you were basically sucking dust, you know, for an hour. It was legit. But before we get back to that, if it's okay, I want to just ask you, who's the fastest in your household?
That's a controversial topic.
We're going to stir the whole pot right now.
So, I mean, now it's getting a fight between me and Addie because she's getting way quick.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm the older sister, right? I'm entitled to be the fastest. But she's so quick. But my dad, like, he won't touch a bike for a month because he'll be so busy with work and whatnot. And then he'll come and he'll destroy us all.
Yeah. We've all witnessed it. I mean, we've all lived it.
Totally.
Getting whooped by your dad.
And so Preston and I actually coached your older brother, Andrew, and he was unreal. And I mean, it runs in the family. You know, there is something that's there. And I want you to come back to that maybe a little bit later. But when you think about the competitive lead up of your household to one race, 2 of you are going to race on any given race day, you know, your little sister. So leading into Mantua, take us through that, if you don't mind. Just what's going on the week of and the lead up to, as an example, run us through the week leading into Mantua. What's the mindset in the household? What's the vibe? Is everybody going to bed like at 7 p.m.?
Well, like I'm going to bed at 7 p.m. Addie's out partying. I don't know how she does it. But I think it's like my dad for the full week before is like talking about where our mind's sitting, what we're eating, what we're doing. And I mean, at this point, we've all done so many races that we know how to fuel ourselves, and we try to have a positive mindset. But it's like he talks with us, and he's like, well, like, where are you sitting? How you feeling? What can we do to make you feel better about this race? And what can we do to make sure you're in the right mindset to be able to go and get this done to the best of your ability? And so I think it's just like a full week of that and him being like, okay, well, let's sit down and get this done now so then you can be prepared for that day.
Has your dad always done that for every race that you could remember? Or did that change as you developed as a racer? He kind of changed how he handled you prior to the race?
I think, yeah, it grew as we grew because, you know, obviously me, an 8th grader, doesn't need to be sat down and be like, so, like, where's your mind at? You know, I just wanted to go get my bike and go pedal. But I think he realized, and I think he like did a lot more research and figuring out like there's so much going on in our brain when we're racing that's just so much more important than anything else before race day practically. And so I think he realized that, and so then became such a bigger topic before that race and what's going on in our head.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, and we know your dad, you know, he's one of the nicest humans / humble athletes I've met. Incredible himself. Did it start there with him, you know, in terms of just biking in your household or the introduction to bikes?
Yeah, it like he can't sit still, so of course biking was his go-to and his favorite. And so I've been doing it since I was as young as I could, right?
Yeah.
And I think Andrew picked it up, and then it was my turn, and I really didn't want to do it. And then they're like, come on, just come to the practice. Like, just come to the meeting. And one video hit home to me, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Like, I'll do the team.
What was that video? Do you remember?
I don't know what year it was. Maybe the 2019, 2018, like, recap of the year.
The NICA season recap video?
Recap.
Okay.
Something about that hit home.
Really? Cool.
And I was like, I have to get involved. I have to do this.
Yeah. So when I go back to my first experience with Ashlee, it was you're a Devo rider, and I was spending a lot of time with Mikkel Malott and a couple other riders in the Devo scene. And I remember, you know, their parents asking me, hey, will you warm them up and talk to them before the race? And I'm like, of course, you know, I love spending, you know, that time. Well, Ashlee was there that day, and you know, so there were 3 girls in the warm up, and we were, you know, we kind of chatted for a second, and then we started riding. And within like 3 seconds, Ashlee was way off the back, dropped, and super quiet, you know. And so that was my introduction to Ashlee, kind of shy, kind of reserved, and not necessarily having the confidence. Fast forward to today, and watching you on the bike it's not just fast. There's something about your body language and confidence. Take us through the transition. How does young Ash go from, you know, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing on a bike, you know, to like truly being a beast out there on the course, like incredibly strong?
I think like just that winter, something clicked for me, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to put the work into it. And I think with that training and that time, that grew my confidence. I knew I could go out there and perform to my best, like to the best of my ability. Where before, like, this was a new sport to me. I was just there, you know, my dad made me come, like, and so I think just being able to realize that it was something I loved and something I wanted to put time into, and that gave me the confidence to be able to ride like that, and to be able to, I think, is such a big key to be confident in your abilities and the fitness that you know you have and that you put the time in to get. And I think that changed everything for me, was realizing that, like, yes, there'll always be someone better than you, but having that confidence that you can go perform the best you can will change how you ride.
You know what I really like about we've all been able to witness and watch you develop as a woman, as a racer. But what it's done for the Morgan High team is we now have this little sister effect that has spread far and wide. And I think a lot of it points back to everyone watching Ashlee and witnessing her success and really her work ethic. I'm talking about you in third person, so I apologize. But you. And so now we've got a group of 8 girls that could all be in JVA or varsity, even though they're really young. They're putting down times that belong in those categories. It's awesome. It's really fun to watch. But I think they are all living and watching your shadow and mimicking what you do. So I think you should take some pride also in what's happening behind you and who's on your will, because I think that's really pretty cool.
Do you feel that from them? I mean, that may feel weird to kind of talk about yourself that way, but do you feel and sense that what you're doing is having an impact on the riders around you?
I think so. Like, I think about when I was a freshman and those, like, senior girls, like, I looked up to them. They were, like, everything to me, you know, and being able to go ride with them. And I'm not sure if I have the same effect on them, but, like, I know that, like, asking them about their race and being excited for them and all this stuff, like, that made such a difference to me as a freshman that I know that it has to have that same effect on them because, you know, like, it's so awesome to have someone older than you acknowledge you and acknowledge the hard work that you're doing and to be able to build you up in that way. And I think also just having the confidence to go ride with the boys and not to be scared of that and be like, guys, this is a sport for everyone. Like, so what if you're the only girl? Come ride with us. Like, we can be there together. Like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It seemed like whenever your brother was in town, it was always Ashlee, her older brother, and his buddies. And you were with them. And I think that was really great to witness and watch, is the little sister was hanging out with the big brother and maybe putting hurt on him just as much too, right?
Not maybe.
No,
I know several of your brothers who are like, crap, Ashlee's here. Because it was going to be like, yeah, she was going to make some dudes uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because she was going to go all in, you know?
No doubt. When if you had your choice, would you rather be racing, training, or free riding?
That's hard because, like, when it's a good race, it's a good race. And it's like you're on top of the world, right? Everything came together. But when it's a bad race, it's a bad race. And it's really hard to go through and process that bad race, right? You're like, put all this time and effort in and it didn't go as I wanted. But I think racing is it's just the top of everything. Like, it's what you're doing all this training for that race. And to be able to accomplish that, there's nothing more satisfying. So I think definitely racing.
Yeah. Can you get on your bike and just ride with, like, no purpose?
Yeah, I do that a lot, actually.
Do you? Okay. All right.
Recovery rides.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, I'm gonna chill. I'm not gonna have any expectation today other than just be out here
and smile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Right.
I'm going to take you back to something you said before, because I think this is interesting for people who are listening, especially girls. Ashlee has been riding with boys, you know, for years, but not just boys. Preston and I actually belong to a cycling club, Mountain Green Cycling Club, and Ashlee comes to the road rides. These are a bunch of men who are still trying to earn a letterman's jacket in cycling in their 40s and 50s. And it's intense, you know? I mean, the pace goes up. Ashlee comes. She's been there several times. There are very few women who come. Ashlee is the only teen girl for sure and never gets dropped. So what is it about your mindset of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations that you thrive in? Do you intentionally do that? Is your dad on you to do that? I mean, what is it about showing up to those kinds of things and being like, hey, I'm here, I'm going to do this?
I think it's a little mix of both. I mean, I grew up with my dad saying life is about being uncomfortable. And so, like, those rides, I did fight a little bit with my dad. Like, I can't go without you. Like, that's so weird, like, with all these people. But I think eventually I realized that I will not get that type of workout unless I go there. Like, I can go try to do intervals with myself any day, but with that group of people, I will get such a better workout and I'll become a better rider for it. So it doesn't really matter if it's uncomfortable or awkward, or if I run into someone's tire, like, it's fine. Like, I'm getting a better workout. Like, this is for the better.
Yeah. What's interesting about those rides, you may not know this, I'm going to just tell you this, you know, just so you have some inside scoop. The conversation that's going on in the Peloton the days you come is about you and your fearlessness. And it's these are a bunch of dudes who ride hard. They're very talented riders who are there. And it's interesting that when you show up and you do something that's hard, that's maybe out of your comfort zone, the reaction has never been in that group, why is she here? It's been, she is super cool. This is amazing. Like the respect level, right, is off the charts for what you're doing. And that continues to flow into now the NICA season and the teams and what's going on. And when you think about, you know, the racing that you're doing now, both, you know, in Morgan, but throughout the state, has that or showing up in those uncomfortable situations and maybe that struggle, how has that led you to the strength that you have now?
Well, I think it's so easy to lean back on those times and be like, that was serious pain. Like, I can get back there. And sometimes I'm like, dude, I can feel this pain. That pain was way worse. Like,
yeah.
I think just to lean on that and be like, I put in that time and I put in those uncomfortable situations. And that was like, that time when it really hurt, like, I can go feel that again and go get it done here.
Do you draw on that? I mean, is that intentional? Kind of hearing you kind of refer back to that, you know, you're using going back to a prior pain cave. If that makes sense. Remembering that and being like, I'm okay. I've been through that. So do you intentionally go there?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's what motivates me the most is like when you're sitting there and you're like, I've already done this before. Like I've been in the same exact situation. I know how to deal with this. Like I can go do this and go feel that pain and go get this done in a proper way. Like it's nothing new. And I think like it's so hard to be able to push yourself to a new place, but once you get there, it's easier to get back. And I think be able to experience that in that group ride or an interval session or whatnot is so much easier to go back and feel that again and be able to draw on that.
Can you, what is your most disappointing result that kind of eats at you?
I say either nationals this year or state last year. They're both just really hard. It wasn't the result. It was more of where I was at mentally. I allowed myself my negative thoughts to get to me and kind of just tear me down, not be able to ride where I should have been riding. And yeah.
So you think both of those races were more mental than anything else?
I mean, state had the factor of my broken seat, right? You know, I was off the back because my seat broke off and I crashed. But I think I allowed myself to slow down because I'm like, well, my seat's broken. Like, it's not like there's no use. Like, you know, all this stuff. Gave myself all these excuses and I allowed myself to take it.
Yeah.
Which I think is so lame, you know, because I trained all year for that race. But, you know.
So what's your plan now going forward when you deal with something similar? Do you have a different mindset or a different mental plan?
Well, one thing I've been working super hard on this year, that was my goals, is trying to just monitor my mental even more. Like, I'm usually pretty good about it, but it's just so hard when it's a bad race to just not be like, well, it's over. Like, this is so dumb. Like, I'm done racing. I want to get off my bike.
Yeah.
But I think just monitoring that and being aware of what I'm telling myself, because what's going on in your head is so powerful and affects your biking like so much, and it's just crazy.
How do you know that?
Well, I get told that 24/7 by my dad. But I feel it. I feel it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think going into doing something hard and you're just like, I don't want to do this, or
yeah,
like even in like schoolwork and at school and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so hard and waste of time, all this stuff. You go in and it's so much so much worse than it would have been if you just went in with a positive mindset and being like, it'll be over, like we'll get it done, it'll be good.
So take us into a race. Take us to, you know, nationals this year. In that moment where you're thinking the negative thoughts are creeping in, they're starting to come. What do you do in that moment, or what did you do in that moment? And what have you learned, you know, and change so that negative thought doesn't fester and become, you know, the buddy on your shoulder telling you the wrong things?
I think like, yeah, like changing like what you're saying in your head. I mean, I have a song called Unstoppable by Sia. Shout out to Sia, because she's actually been with me for so long now.
Yeah.
But this song, like, I listen to it on repeat before a race. I try to get stuck in my head. It never happens, but, like,
yeah,
it empowers me. And so I try to sing those lyrics in my head. So it's like
Pre-race or during race?
during the race, say
Okay.
those thoughts are coming up on me, I'm like, okay, let's just sing some Sia. Like, I'll be fine. But I mean, it doesn't always, it's not 100%, but I think I should have done that more, but I just allowed those thoughts to consume me because I was sitting where I didn't want to be. And I allowed, like, oh, well, I got caught in the crash in the start, so it's like I'm validated in where I'm sitting. But I wasn't, you know? I could have rode harder. I'm like, oh, it's hot. Like, it's so hard, you know? So I think just, like, everyone's hurting that bad. And I think that is so easy to forget. Be like, that girl looks so much like, she's going so much faster. She feels so much better than me. But we're all hurting the same. Yeah. Or if not more, like, go ride. Like,
what do you think is happening in the moment in your brain? You know, the negativity. What is your brain telling you? If you don't mind, I wanted to like double click on this because I think that I want kids to start to recognize the connection to what your brain is saying and that there's a strategy for that, right? That I'll let you answer to that first, but what is your brain telling you in that moment?
It's telling me that this hurts too much. It is hurting too much. I mean,
yep.
It's your brain's job to protect you from getting hurt, and it's saying you're hurting yourself too much. Like, you need to stop. Like, this is too much pain, and I think it's so easy to get sucked into. You're like, you're right. This really hurts. Like, I'm done.
So there's a concept there that, I mean, my youngest, James, who's racing, he hears it too often, but there is a concept of good hurt and bad hurt, but your brain just feels hurt. It doesn't necessarily know how to distinguish between the two. And in that moment, our brain, when it gets going, is telling us this hurts too much. Stop. Like, what are you doing? This is horrible. And that's an okay reaction to listen to your brain. But in that moment, right, it's not like you're dying. It just hurts. And that good hurt becomes something you have to become accustomed to. You just described several instances where in training and in intervals and doing these things, you get used to good hurt so that you become confident that it's okay. So in that, nationals race, when you started to feel that way, could you get back to where you wanted to be positively? Or is that the disappointment that Preston asked about, that you ended with disappointment because not the result as much as you never got back on top of the good hurt thinking versus bad hurt?
Yeah, I think it was definitely more the disappointment when I finished. I was just like, I traveled all this way here for what? To allow my brain to stop me from doing what I needed to get done, like what I could accomplish, because I knew I had it in me. I knew that I could go ride my hardest. Like, it's there. I've done, used it 1,000 times, but I just allowed my brain to stop me. And so I think that was the biggest disappointment, was not the placement. It doesn't matter where I place. It's just as long as I feel good about the race at the end of the day, that I felt like I gave it my all.
Let's switch then. What is your most memorable race that gave you maybe your most joy, your most happiness, regardless of result?
That's a lot of races to think about.
And it can be the one you won, because I know there's a lot of those.
Yeah. I mean, one this year that felt good was out in Missoula. They had 2 days of cross country, and one day I just felt something clicked. And I remember texting a friend that night, be like, I haven't felt this good in 2 years. It's about to go. And it felt so good. I was just able to hop on that top girl's wheel and just go ride. And it felt so good to be able to, I thrived in the pain cave. And it's been such a long time since that time to be able to thrive in that pain cave. And that was the struggle. Beginning of the season was I'm not feeling I'm getting there. Yeah. I'm able to thrive there and be happy there, and not happy, but I guess be okay with that good pain we talked about.
Yeah.
So that was a good race because I was mentally there. I mean, I was mad because she dropped me on the downhill, and I was like, I was so close. I could have gotten it with that downhill skills that I got to get. But, I was glad to be there on the uphill.
Was there something different that led into that when you go back and think, what was it that allowed me to feel so good? Was it the training? Was it the training physically and mentally? You were now there. It came together.
I think when we went and pre-rode the course, I just felt so good. I was like, I know this course. This course is it's super fun. Had a bunch of climbing, which usually is what helps me out in these races.
Yeah.
I love the climbing on these races. And so had that, I went in, and I think just had that confidence in that race, which I haven't had in a lot of these races, because a lot of these USA cycling races, they're super technical. They're nothing like our NICA races. And So I think a lot of those races I'd go in being a little bit nervous about that drop or these rocks I had to hit and stuff that I was worried that would take off time. But this one I just had the confidence that I'm like, I know I can get this. Like, I know I can go ride my hardest and there'll be nothing in my way. So I think that the confidence was such a key to that allowed me to go perform my best.
So I remember as a coach when you were a sophomore, well, actually, maybe it was when you were a sophomore, but that doesn't matter. But I remember you approaching me at one point and wanting to figure out how to go faster downhill, right? And I think that's always been something you've always been working on, trying to do. Talk to us a little bit about that, and how have you approached a skill that you wanted to improve on? Like, what all have you done to try to become better?
I think just being willing to get uncomfortable. Like, we'll be days we'll go out with my dad, me and my sister, and he'll be like, I know like this drop's uncomfortable, but we got to figure this out because they're everywhere and these are skills. So I think just working on it consistently and being willing to get uncomfortable and go get that done, even if it's something you don't really want to do. I mean, there's a lot of days I'm like, Dad, can we just go ride our bike? Like, I don't want to go through this and run the same rock garden over to go figure out how to position yourself. Like, I think just consistency and being willing to get uncomfortable is the biggest key.
That's brilliant. Because I think a lot of riders, especially as a coach and kind of seeing what goes on, that if you ride consistently and you just, go hard, that's enough. And to a certain extent, it's going to have you in the mix. But there's little things, attention to detail, the ability to handle your bike, especially like you said, at USA events, right? I mean, if you can't jump your bike and if you can't ride technical lines, that's going to be a challenge. It's an entirely different level. So that's cool about getting uncomfortable. Is that in your family culture? Like, is that something that your parents talk about? Just, hey, that's just life? Take us through that, because you mentioned your dad now several times, but I know your mom pretty brilliant too. And what's it like in your household that way?
That is definitely, like I said, we have the mantra, life is about being uncomfortable. I think it's said about 20 times in our household before the end of the day. But I think both my parents raised us in a way where they're there, but they're like, well, you're going to go talk to this person. You're going to call that person up if you need something from that. They allowed us to be able to take care of ourselves in a way that made us uncomfortable, to figure out how to adult and take care of ourselves. And I think that, which is applied into everything in our household, is that you get this done, and even if it's uncomfortable, that's life. Like, life is not sitting back and letting things happen to you. You get it done in a way, regardless of consequences.
Yeah. It seems like, and I've just kind of witnessed it, interacting over the years, that as talented and as committed as your family is to biking and racing, nothing is given, right? It's not like, Ashlee wanted to race bikes, and so mom and dad went out and bought a $12,000 S-Works and was like, here you go, go fast. Tell us about that piece of it, that if you can be in it and you can be committed, but it seems like you're heavily involved in the gear and all of those things, that you're part of the equation of getting, the sport underway. So
yeah, I think as much as I wish they had gone by me, but Nestworks, I think it takes, they realize that it brings ownership to it. I paid for that bike, I helped pay for this, and it's just kind of proven that it's what I want, and I'll work for it regardless, so what if I ride 20 more times than this kid over here with a way nicer bike? That's not what life's about. Life's about going and get it. You earn what you get. And so I think my parents, that's just how they raised us, is that, we're not just going to give something to you, show us that you want it. We'll pay half. They paid for half my bike, and they're like, show us that you want the other half really bad.
Is there a pride in that? When you finish a race and it's on the bike that you paid half for, is that, is there additional fulfillment in that for you?
I think so. I think, I'm I worked lots of hours for this bike, and I just got it done on this bike. So yeah,
That's cool.
I love what your parents have been teaching you with regards to empowering you to do hard things. I feel like that's something that can't be lost in this conversation, is, the way you've been raised and the way you've been coached and taught by your mom and your dad to empower you to do anything you want to do. And I think that's really, really pretty great. What do you anticipate? How do you anticipate the rest of the race season going?
I don't know. I mean, that's a hard question, but I mean, I feel pretty good about it. I mean, the other 2 races have been good, and I know I have the fitness. I've been training all year long, and so as long as things go well and I don't break a bike, I see maybe same results. I mean, hopefully catch some varsity boys.
Absolutely.
Let's do that.
Let's do
That's I want to watch that.
So do I.
Man. I don't know. State's coming up, and I have no idea what to expect for that. I'm super excited. We have a bunch of super fast girls that I've been racing with for the past couple of months, so I'm excited to see how that goes.
Is there specific riders throughout the state that you try to track and follow? I mean, are you stalking people on Strava or following them and, race results throughout the state?
I mean, at this point, all those girls are like my best friends now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I keep up on results and stuff, say congrats, comment on their Instagram posts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I keep in contact, but I'm just excited for them. Like, they're excited for me.
Does that push you, knowing fast girls throughout the state? I mean, is that culture and getting to know them and being friends with them, do you push each other, or do you just kind of stay out of it unless you're in a race together?
Well, I think there's just such mutual respect for all of us that, like, when it's race day, right? We're competitors. We're going to go out, nothing in our way to go get it done. But I think we just all respect each other and just, we're friends, but we want to go win. We want to go work our hardest and whatnot.
It's hard not to have that respect when they're putting in the hours and the work, right? The dedication is there. Obviously, you want to win, but it's hard not to respect and have that admiration when, your peers are out doing that stuff. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I love so much about NICA is we'll go all hurt together, for that hour and 10 minutes, and then we're best friends after the fact, regardless how the results are. We'll go do our cool down together. We'll go watch the rest of the races go by together, and I think that's just so interesting. You would have never thought, even if this girl beat me that day before, I still want to go cool down with her.
Yeah.
I still want to ask her how her race went. I still want to go watch the rest of the races with her.
Do you see that as an attractive and unique thing to mountain biking with NICA in Utah? I mean, as a sport, that's typically not the same, 2-team sport, teams may go at it during, the actual game, and afterwards are not necessarily hanging out with each other that way. So has that been unique for you over the years to just be a part of a culture, that isn't necessarily trying to crush each other even after the game, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that's definitely unique to mountain biking. Is what other sports do girls hug each other after someone just beat them at a race?
Right.
Like the girls run in, you give them a big hug, and you're like, congrats, like you did awesome. I don't see that anywhere else, and I think it just makes everyone seem a little more human, and I think it kind of helps you get out ahead almost, because you're like, these people are just like me, you hear about their personal lives, hear about this, and it's not just some girl that goes and crushes it on the bike. She's a human too,
Yeah.
And so I think it's way different than any other sport.
It seems like has something to do with suffering together. Like when you all suffer together, you know what she went through, right? You know how she felt because you know how you felt, right? And I think there's some admiration and some respect that's earned, which allows you guys to all be buddies off the bike. Don't you think?
Yeah, definitely so.
I mean, no one pedaled the laps for them.
Yeah.
And so I grew up playing football and baseball, and there were a number of moments where I'm sure I was blaming my teammates for, messed up play or whatever. And, in that regard, mountain biking, individual sports is so unique because it is you. And especially in mountain biking, you are both the athlete and the coach out there, which is why I'm so intrigued about your mindset and what you say and, in your reoccurring thoughts, that's going on out there. And that respect level for each other is really cool. Dive back in, if you don't mind, just to some of your mindset stuff. When you think about an actual maybe moment in a race, you can go there. You mentioned a song, that you think through, or that it's a reoccurring thought. We tend to ask, athletes, when you're out there in the pain cave, is your reoccurring thought something that an emotion, maybe think about it that way. Do you rely on a certain emotion to keep you motivated? Like maybe a moment of anger, maybe a moment of like anger, or embarrassment or love or whatever. When I was racing when I was younger, I relied heavily on two moments in my life where shame and embarrassment were motivators. And I used them literally for hours in races, like anger, like I'm just going to mash the pedals, using these emotions, from when I was younger. As I started to have children and get married, the emotion switched that I would use in racing to gratitude and love. I can't wait to see JT at the aid station in P2P mile 70 after, 8 hours on the bike. When you think about racing, kind of dive into your mindset, are there certain emotions that help you mash the pedals better? I mean, have you ever thought about that?
Well, I can now. I think just that feeling and that satisfaction of being able to cross that finish line, knowing I gave it all, because there is nothing worse than that feeling of crossing that finish line and be like, there's still so much left. I can go do another lap. Like, that's the worst feeling ever. And so I think that feeling, and maybe the fear of crossing the finish line and being like, well, that was not how I wanted to go. So I think those two emotions play the biggest in my head, because it's awesome to cross the finish line and be like, yes, that was exactly how I wanted it to go.
Yeah. So the emotion you're describing is regret.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of students and racers, when you're young, you don't dare take the risk to empty the tank. One, because it's going to be painful. And two, you don't have the confidence to get to the finish line with enough left in the tank. So how do you get there? I mean, you described it a little bit earlier, but it seems like the sheer volume of training and racing that you do allows you to get to that experiential confidence, right? In the racing world, we call it race IQ, right? Just the experience of knowing this is how much I have in the tank and this is how much I need to let go until the finish line, to just no regret. So how have you gotten there?
I think one of my biggest things is I like to break the race course into blocks. Some coach told me one time that there'll never be a climb more than 4 minutes, which is totally wrong, because there's climbs longer than 4 minutes.
Was that Preston lying?
I don't think that was my
that
line.
a head fake?
I don't know who told me.
I love it.
But
I know what coach it was. It wasn't us.
anyways, but it actually, even if it's longer than 4 minutes, you think about 4 minutes, that's an interval, right? Like, I can go all out for 4 minutes. I know for a fact I can do that. But when you think about an hour and 10 minutes of all out, that sounds way too big to comprehend and to be able to go feel that amount of pain. But I think, okay, 4 minutes to top of this hill, then I gotta rest. And so I think just be able to think about it that way and be able to put it down in smaller sections of pain, I know I can go do that and calm out for 4 minutes. I do that on a Tuesday,
Yeah.
And so I think just be able to put it down to little pieces I can take, I think also just by allowing that emotion to play and to be like, okay, well, think about it more. Do you want this? Does this pain hurt more than that regret will after the fact when you have to sit and think about it?
It's awesome. I love hearing you kind of describe that, that just your mindset of this climb's not going to last forever. In racing, have you found that is the case, that in mountain bike races, it's really a sequence of intervals mixed with tempo? I mean, is that how you kind of think through it? I mean, very few races are at an hour and 10-minute interval, right? And so what would you say in an average hour-long race, how many segments would you say you're all in? I'm on the rivet. This is getting really long for me.
Let's think. So even just on Manti, there was 3 laps, right? There was there's 2 climbs at the beginning and the end, and then a straightaway at the beginning. But other than that, it's downhill or recovery. And so Like, it's not that much as you think about it. And so probably, like, a little more than half, if not, because these NICA courses, you're going down just as much as you're going up.
Yeah. So, but in your mind, is that what you're saying to yourself? Hey, this is going to hurt for 10, 12 minutes, and then I'm going to have, 5 to 10. Yes, I got to push the pedals, but I'm going to be able to breathe again, right? I can kind of relax and open my lungs and relax my hands. I'm not bent over, hammering the pedals like the uphill.
I never used to. I just used to think about the whole race as a whole, but I found, like, I feel so much better if I just, like, okay, top of this climb, and then that downhill, just think about, like, one piece at a time, because it's overwhelming to think about a whole race and that amount of pain,
Yeah.
Like, obviously, yeah, but it's just think about that climb to get up to that top, like, just right here, and then recovery. And I think, like, a girl on my team named Sophia Waite, that's how she would talk about everything, and I think I kind of just took on that. She's like, well, guys, just got to kill it right here, because there's just downhill right after this, and then you're good, like, and then another one. Like, that's how she thought about it, and I thought that was like, oh, that's really interesting to think about. Like, yeah, I don't need to think about the climb after the downhill. Like, I just think about that and get there, and just step by step.
I think that's so valuable for racers to hear you describe that, because oftentimes the anxiety that all of us feel pre-race is, I'm about to eat an elephant. And in reality, I feel like one of the greatest ways to minimize anxiety pre-race is to do what you just described, to segment it. It's going to be super painful for 7 minutes. And then I'm going to have 10, to chill a little bit, kind of catch my breath. And then I'm going to have another 7. So that, just hearing you describe that, what other advice would you give for listeners? Whether they're young, old. Preston and I would love your advice. What advice would you give anyone listening about your experience in training and racing?
Yeah, maybe think about the girls that are following you and are chasing your will. Your little sister, that group of kids.
Maybe not your best trade secrets. Maybe like your JV trade secrets.
I think one of the most important things is just, it doesn't matter what everyone else is saying. People will always have stuff to say. And if you let it get to your head, it'll get you down. And I think, like, yeah, be willing to make yourself uncomfortable to get it done, to be able to make yourself better, look at the long run, what's most important, regardless of what people are saying, or if they're saying that's weird, or, like, why are they doing that? Like, just go get it done. And I think just don't care what other people have to say, because ultimately it's about you, it's about your race, and it's about your training.
Boom.
And on that one, you've had your daily dose.